Welcome to the podcast that still doesn't have a name. Today, I'm here with Miss Lacey French from last week, same person. But this time, it's not about me, okay? It's about Lacey and her thoughts and feelings and workings on mind, body, and the relationship between food, exercise, etc. Because she works with females also, like I do. This intro is dying.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so I'm going to be looking at my phone because the questions I'm not very good at remembering. Okay, so why did you start going to the gym?
I think exercising was always something that I knew I was supposed to do. My mum was quite militant with her exercise. My stepdad was a jiu-jitsu teacher and a bodybuilder. So it was always something that was really familiar and just something that I always knew was a normal thing to do. So it was always, always normal, got into it. And then when I moved away, I was always quite kind of quiet and probably didn't socialize as much as everybody else. That's kind of how I would fill my time, by going to the gym. Like, that was my hobby, and that's how I got into it. I'm lucky enough to genuinely enjoy exercise as well.
Good. And you had a sporting background, didn't you? Mm-hmm. Did ice skating, which is pretty hardcore, pretty vigorous sort of day to day. So explain the transition from high elite level sport to then just training each and every day.
Yeah, ice skating, it definitely set me up well for the gym. It gave me like a good foundation of like mobility, flexibility and core strength. But it also got me into the practice of showing up for something every day. It taught me a lot of patience because you don't get anywhere fast in ice skating. It takes months to learn the most minute skill. So it taught me patience, it taught me consistency. And it gave me this habit of, you leave your phone off the rink and you have to concentrate on exactly what you do, and you're very much in the moment. You're not thinking about anything else. So then when I stopped skating, I still needed to be able to get into that zone because that was something that I was so used to doing as a form of just being present. If that makes sense.
And that's a massive thing, is finding why you go to the gym. Mm. And obviously going from that sort of elite level sport to the gym, you're not doing it for other people. You're doing it for yourself to fill that void that losing ice skating did. Mm-hmm. So what do you think some of the main issues that prevent women from getting into the gym or starting in the gym?
I definitely think the main one is a lack of knowledge, as in they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do when they're in there. And I think there's also this misconception that the gym is grueling, horrendously difficult, and it takes, a level of willpower, when actually it doesn't have to be like that. It's just about finding something that you enjoy, and it doesn't have to be like grueling, like running on the treadmill. Like, lifting weights can be very enjoyable. And I think that's what puts people off, is that they don't realize that it's not something that you turn up to and just struggle through for an hour. Like, you can go and enjoy that hour fully.
Exactly. And a lot of females go and feel empowered because you're doing something that society doesn't think you mm-hmm. should be able to do. And when you go and start lifting weights and start enjoying it and actually moving objects that are heavier than yourself, it's quite empowering thing.
Really empowering.
Perfect. So I want to go through a little bit more about self-belief, and obviously gym anxiety and not knowing or not feeling like you can do it before you get to the gym. But when you're at the gym, being able to understand that you can do whatever you want, and if you have a structure. So go through more self-belief and then actually applying it with a program.
Self-belief, obviously you're going to look at things and think, I can't do that, because you can't do that. Like, I can't squat 180 kilograms. Like, I can't do that. But say for something that I want to be able to do, like a pull-up, right now I look at it and I think I can't do that. But if I have a plan to break that down into steps and know that I'm practicing that every week, then eventually I'll get to a point where I can do that. So it's just about if there's something that you want to be able to do and you just believe that you can't, just about having a plan in place to break it down to get there.
Perfect. Okay, this podcast has started extremely serious and it's stressing me out. Okay. So I'm gonna relax a little bit, because I can't do an hour of that. That was stressful. Oh my God. That was like, what's happened? I was like, what has gone on? Right. So we're going to move on to more mind and body. That is the subject that I've written on my phone. It might be something completely different, but that's what I've got down. So,
And it's relevant because I am a
mind and body coach. Huh?
psychologist.
Oh yeah, also. Oh yeah. And the main part about this is the reason why we're having this grilling of Lacey today is because she's a psychologist and has a degree in psychology. Not just because I've found on the street and I brought her in. She actually has a lot of knowledge in this subject. So moving on to mind and body. So how do you feel about the difference and the similarity between motivation and discipline when it comes to your health?
Okay. Motivation is a force. Discipline is an act of care. Okay, so motivation, you're forcing yourself, you're feeling this rush, this force to get somewhere, and that's always going to burn out at some point. Discipline is an act of self-care, the same way that you would care for a child. You would feed them the right things, you'd put them to bed on time, you would not let them eat too many sweets and not let them do things that were bad for them, even if they wanted to, because that's an act of care and that's sustainable and that's going to see you through in the long run. Whereas motivation is short-lived, it's fickle, and it can't be relied upon.
Exactly. And so explain what in your life would you call as your disciplines? So what do you personally do day to day, every single day?
I'll make sure that I go to bed at a decent time, which will be like 9 or 10 p.m. Good sleep, that's a priority, that's a discipline because, sometimes I want to stay up all night and watch Netflix, but I don't. I put myself to bed. I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week. That's more so habit now than discipline, but it started with discipline. I'll prepare my meals 3 to 4 days in advance to make sure that the healthiest option is the most convenient option. I'll make sure I drink enough water, get outside of the house, leave my phone behind, go on walks. And I'll also do things like meditating when I don't feel like it, when I don't have time. I know that meditation is something that's good for me. So I'll make sure I take 10 minutes to do that.
Yeah, meditation is something that you do quite a lot. And I'm like, I couldn't think of anything worse than sitting still for 5, even a minute.
But in that way, I'm taking care of myself and I'm taking care of my mind. And that's why I will do it even when I feel way too busy or I can't be bothered or it seems boring. I can see the benefit of doing that.
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable. And that's what I say to people is, and with my clients as well, I'll go through and say, I'm not just telling you to do steps and drink water and go to the gym and all this. I'm not doing it because it's funny for me to watch you do it. I'm doing it because when you do this consistently, it builds up a healthy lifestyle that you can sustain and it becomes habit, but you get the results from it over being consistent with it and it becomes your non-negotiable. So I'll say 10,000 steps is a non-negotiable because you get out into the fresh air, away from work, whatever it might be. And also you burn the calories from doing it as well. So there's so many different benefits that when someone says, oh, I've got to do my steps, it's because you haven't planned so that you're having to rush it. And then of course nobody wants to do steps at 8, 9 p.m. in winter time. Like that's just not something people want to do. But figuring out what your non-negotiables are each and every day or even weekly, okay, that could be to take a day off from work. Like should listen to myself really, but to take a day off from work and do nothing because that's going to refresh you for the next week, or daily to make sure that you've hit a certain amount of protein if you've got a muscle gaining goal, or if it's to make sure you hit your calories or be just under your calories to make sure that if you're in a fat loss stage. So all these, you need to sit down and figure out what are the steps that I need to do each and every day to get to my goal and make those a non-negotiable. For me at the moment, even though I haven't done it for a few days, is now the ice plunge. I spent money on I nearly spent a lot more money than what I did on a nice fancy wooden one, but I didn't. I got a blowout one. And no matter how I'm feeling, I'm getting in there. I was ill, so I didn't do it, but that's different because I don't want to get more ill. But saying to myself, I'm going to go to train I wake up at 5, train at 6 every single day in the week. That's non-negotiable. Then I get home from that and I'm going to add the ice bath. That's now a new discipline that I'm trying to add. And it's still not a discipline yet because I could easily not do it. I just know that that's going to be beneficial for me, more of a mindset thing, because if I can get into a cold bath of water in the morning, then I feel like I can do anything else. Good work, Quinn. Well done. Right. So next one is, what are the signs that you need to listen to your body and not ignore it?
I think mentally it comes down to self-awareness and being able to tell the difference between laziness and genuine fatigue. It can be easy to push past when you've been seeing results. You're excited by these results. You are feeling motivated, but your body is genuinely running on empty. You need to learn to recognize when you really are tired, and it's not just that you're being lazy and you don't feel like going. That's why having a plan is the best thing to do, because if you've got 4 workouts a week and 12,000 steps a day, if you're feeling the need to do more than that, then you know that you're going overboard. But ultimately it comes down to your own self-awareness, and no one else except you is going to know whether you're being lazy or whether you are genuinely tired.
Yeah, it's a tough one when people, and this is the reason why people can't sustain a new workout regime or fitness journey, like the amount of times that people start and stop because they think they have to go balls to the wall from day one. I have to go to the gym every day. I have to work out as hard as possible. I have to do the same muscle groups, whatever it might be. And then 2 weeks later, they're not going to the gym at all because they can't sustain that. And that's where having a program, having a coach, being there and saying, you're doing the right thing, you need to just take the time. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, you can't grow muscle in 1 day or 1 week. It takes time. You can't lose the amount of body fat that you want to lose, or you can't lose body fat quickly. It's a slow, consistent process. So the quicker people understand that, or the sooner you understand that and realize that, okay, I'm not going to get the results by tomorrow, but by next week, I might see little small results. And then by next month, I'm definitely going to see results. When you can sit back and say that to yourself, okay, you're going to have a much, much better mindset going into trying to get in shape, lose body fat, gain muscle, whatever it might be.
And I think also there's physical signs that you can look into. Like, you need to be paying attention to, are you losing weight too quickly? Are you not losing weight at all? Is your body responding to the program that you're on or not? Your hair, your skin, your nails, these are all things that I've experienced that might suggest that you are pushing it too far and you are being too harsh on your body. And you just really have to respect your body and listen when it is trying to tell you things, down to your cycle. Like, for example, a lot of women, like if they're experiencing problems with the skin, irregular periods, like, your body is trying to tell you that something isn't quite right. And that's what it actually means to listen to your body instead of just brushing these symptoms under the rug.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's a long game. If you feel like you're like, I could really do without going to the gym today or doing anything, rest is good, right? But in the long run, that 1, maybe 2 days of not doing anything is not going to have the same negative impact that you believe it is going to. Like, the amount of times people go, oh, I'm not going to be able to get to the gym today. That's almost like, that's me done. That's my progress done. It's like, no, you just go again tomorrow. And that's as silly as that sounds when you're on the outside, when you are that person that's smashed every single workout and that you've set your standards so high, like a lot of my clients do and a lot of people do, they go in and they go, I'm going to nail this. And they do nail it. Suddenly when they have a day off, they think that their progress is just going to be taken away from them. And it's like, no, you're just going to get a bit of rest and then go again tomorrow and then you'll feel much better. And that's something that I do tackle with my clients quite a lot.
It seems people tend to be one end of the spectrum. They're not into it at all, they are being genuinely lazy, or they're at the other end of the spectrum, overdoing it. It's rare to find someone, even myself, that is just perfectly balanced and in the middle.
Yeah, I'm either one or the other. And I have to have external factors who are sort of keeping me grounded. And that's the same thing as what a coach does. I'm very much the same as anyone else. I'm not a professional at it. That's why I've been out of shape and in great shape, because I'll have stints of a big push. And then once that sort of, that stage has disappeared or I've done what I needed to do or whatever. Once you don't have those goals and the same drive, suddenly slowly it starts to drop off. But just knowing that, having the support system around you to say, look, you don't need to go to the gym today. You're not going to lose progress. You're just going to feel much better about it. Once you can sort of reinforce that and have the people around you and the support network, and this is why I bang on about the support network that you have, it's so important to your progress, then you're going to go further, and in the long run, you're going to benefit.
Yeah, and having a coach is equally as important. If you're not losing weight, someone's going to pull you up on it. I've had cases where my girls are losing weight too quickly and I have to pull them up on it and say we're going too fast and we're going to burn out. So it's just good to have someone keep you accountable and to keep you more balanced, because on the journey of health and fitness, it's far too easy to have the balance off. And it's good to have someone to keep you accountable and keep you level-headed.
Definitely. So when it comes to like being in the gym, how would you counter like mental blocks? So like with a few of my clients, they think they can't do things, or I know that they'll be able to do a certain weight, for example, like squats, which is a potentially dangerous exercise if done wrong. How would you sort of explain to someone how to overcome those mental blocks while in the gym?
As in, if someone has got a fear that they're going to hurt themselves by trying to do something too heavy?
Well, I think it's sort of just the whole thing about a number. So for example, like, I don't know, like a 70, 80 kg squat. They've never done it before. It's a new thing, but they've got that fear that they're not going to be able to do it because they've never done it before. And in the back of their mind, there's obviously there's safety stuff that you can put in place. But how would you explain to someone that you can do it? How would you go through with that with a client?
A few things. Firstly, I say this to all my clients: you are always stronger than you think. And if it was life or death, you would push that bar up. Secondly, that fear is there for a reason, because it doesn't want you to get injured. So listen to it and do a bit of research and learn how to escape from that movement safely. And then when you know that you can get out from underneath that squat or from underneath that bench press safely, and maybe even if you have someone to spot you, whether that's a trainer or a friend who's experienced, then you can go for it. But it's probably a good thing that the fear is there, because otherwise you just do silly things and get hurt.
Yeah, of course. And it's just about measuring the risk, you know. If it was a case that you're like, oh, I've just done a really terrible rep at 80, let's whack 90 on the bar. That's a stupid risk, and it's just that's something you should be like, I'm not going to be able to do that. If you have consistently hit 10 reps of 70, for example, 2 weeks in a row, and you're scared of going to 75 or 72.5 or whatever the increment is, that's something that you need to sit and go, I have the confidence and I have the facts and the data that says I can do a very, very small amount less for lots of reps. And when you start to break it down into data and be like, right, I have proof that I can do a very small amount less than this, that's where you can start like, do you know what, this isn't too bad. But again, it is tough. And the amount of time, like I remember when I went for my PB squat, which was, I got 190 and then I went for 210, and I'd never had 210 kgs on my back ever. And the only thing, I picked it up because I thought, I'm going to give it a go. The only thing I could think of when I had that on my back was, this is the heaviest thing I've ever held. And then my squat, everything else went, all right. That will happen because it's new and it's something that you've never done before. But that should be exciting. And if it's not exciting, then then you've got to try and find a way to make it exciting. You've got to find a way to push yourself. But if you don't get you want to be pushing for that good feeling after PBing or after, because at the end of the day, if you're doing a weight that you've never done before, that's a PB. You should be finding a bell in the gym and ringing it, and
don't be afraid to go for those tiny increases, like 1.25. Like that's how you get up to a bigger progression of an extra 5 or an extra 10. Like I've been putting these tiny little weights on dumbbells and on barbells, but that is progression. So don't let your ego get in the way and think that isn't worth trying, because that's how you're going to use the stepping stones to get to that heavier weight. Exactly.
And it's when you're at the bottom end, when you're first starting out, you can normally I call it beginner gains. You can normally, because you're learning movements and you're learning how to use your body in the right sort of patterns, And then you'll get to a point where you're like, okay, shit's getting real now. I'm not going up in tens, do you know? And then that's where you just need to bring it down. And then when you get to the top end, like, do you think these Olympic powerlifters, do you think they're just suddenly PBing by 10 kgs when they're already lifting 200 kg? They PB in 1.25s, or they'll PB in even like 0.50 kg, because when you get to that top end, and your top end, just because they're doing that, your top end still might be here. You've still got to employ the same progressions. You've got to make sure that you are not going, but that person is doing that, so I'm going to be able to jump up to this way. That person is 3 times as strong as you, eats way more than you, all these other things, that you're just a different person, and your capabilities right now might be different to them. So don't try and this comes back to comparison. You can't see someone else's lift and be like, I can't lift that. And it's like you would never even think of squatting 180, but you don't weigh 92 kgs. I've just exposed how much I actually weigh. But like that, you don't weigh that, and you've got to mass moves mass. Like when I was doing my PB stuff, I was like 97.5 kgs, like big boy, right? Whereas now I didn't expect to even do 180, and then obviously it managed to do it. I don't know what happened.
But you know how to get out of that safely when you get to the bottom and you realise you can't get up.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look like it's safe, but the way I bail is forwards.
But I'm just saying that if that fear is there for a reason.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Listen to it and respect it.
Yes, good work. All right, have you ever failed in the gym?
Of course. Yeah, of course. Like I still can't do pull-ups, but it's something that I'm working on. Yeah.
But you use the band, and then that's a regression that, like, you can't just go in and do things.
I said this in a reel recently. If you're not failing, you're obviously not trying hard enough, because the technical failure means that you are working at your absolute limit. And the only way to know that you're working at your limit is if you're failing once or twice. Mm-hmm. If you can just keep doing it, then you're obviously not pushing to your absolute max. That's why failure is a good thing. And if I technically fail at a lift, I'm excited about it, because it means that I'm close to breaking past that wall.
Exactly. It's about pushing out your comfort zone, and you don't ever progress in your comfort zone. So it might be a case that, say you do a few banded pull-ups, you record, I did 5 before I couldn't do any more. And then next time you go in, because you've done those, you've supplemented with protein and made sure that you are growing the muscles, the lats, and obviously everything, and biceps. Next time you go in, you try it again. Suddenly you've done 6 before you fail. And even though you've still failed, you've got 1 more and you've progressed. And that is how you have to view it. If you see failure as, I can't do this, unfortunately you won't go very far, because you have to fail to then progress.
Exactly, yeah. Failure is a good thing.
Have you ever done bench press and not been able to get out of it?
Yes.
Have you?
Yeah, I did it on a reel the other day. Did you not see it?
Oh. Oops. Been caught out there. No, I have not.
Yeah, and I let it drop and then kind of rolled out from underneath it.
You're
because I learned how to do that.
There you go. Yeah, you know what to do.
Because it's got safety pins that you can raise up.
Oh, you had the safety pins.
Yeah, and then rolled out.
Well, listen, take them away. I was trying
to do PB, and I was by myself, so I had to know how to get out of it.
Okay, listen, guys. Don't try and do a big PB when you're on your own. It's only ever no one else is there to see it, so you can't claim it as a PB unless you film it. Okay, that's number 1. Now, number 2 is that you could have your head chopped off. Like, I don't think I've ever benched with the pins, but I've definitely had my head chopped off a few times. But I will not do a big heavy one, like a 1 rep, without someone there, because that's just ludicrous. So, I was
only working with like 45 kilos. It's not that big.
Yeah, but there we go. It's the scale. Like me with 110 or whatever is you with 45. I do 125 if just to make sure everyone knows. But it's the ratios, do you know? So you're saying, that's exactly what we were just talking about. You can't compare yourself to me, who's a meathead, who's been doing it for lifting for 10 years. Okay. What do you always tell your clients if they haven't seen a drop that week in weight, or if they've not increased on their lifts that week? What do you say to them to calm their nerves?
So if we're going to rule out the fact that they have in fact been following the program, that they've been doing everything, they've been showing up, they've stayed within their calories, they've hit the protein, they've hit the steps, they've hit the workouts.
They've been an A-star student.
And they still haven't seen.
And and that week they haven't. Nothing's moved. The weight hasn't moved, or their weight or the weights in the gym haven't sort of. They failed at the same place that they did the week before.
Yeah. So I try to always kind of emphasize to my clients that there isn't necessarily a finish line where one day they're just going to get there and be like, oh, I've reached my goal now, I'm going to stop. Like, I want to get someone into health and fitness and for them to continue to do that for the rest of their life. So therefore, it's not a rush. I still want you to get results quickly and I still want you to get the results that you deserve. But realistically, that might not be every single week. But if you stay consistent and you stay patient, next week you'll see it, or the week after, I guarantee you, because it's science and it works.
Exactly. Very, very true. Okay, now we're going to move on to more nutrition and relationships between food and obviously the mindset that people have going into health and fitness and weight loss. And I work very closely with my clients with this, and I know you do too. So let's get stuck into it. How would you go about softening the guilt of like a one-off treat, even if that person is working so hard, they're perfect in every aspect, and then they have a little treat, but then they have that guilty feeling? How would you go about dealing with that?
Okay, so there's a lot to break down here because we really need to get to the root of this belief system. First of all, a food is not a treat. Okay, a food is not emotional. You're not a dog. It's like a food.
It's true.
A food, especially not a food that is bad for you, is not a treat. Like, attaching emotions to food and making it a reward or a treat, this is a faulty thinking pattern, because it puts that food on a pedestal and it gives that food a power over you and your emotions, and it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. Food is fuel, and you shouldn't have feelings about this food. Secondly, exercise and food are completely different. So you should never be exercising to offset food that you're going to eat or to earn food that you're going to eat, because this is a really toxic way to think about both food and exercising. You exercise to strengthen your body. You feed yourself to also strengthen and fuel your body, but they're not necessarily related. You can do one without the other, and you should never be exercising in order to earn food. I think if you can clean up these ways of thinking first, you're not going to struggle so much with guilt. If you are feeling guilty after eating a certain type of food, then firstly question, maybe you shouldn't be eating that. Maybe that food is going to be stopping you from getting towards your goals. And that guilt is trying to say like, hey, like, please don't do this because I love you and I want you to get to your goal. And that's where guilt comes from. However, if you're extremely harsh on yourself and you feeling guilty about things that it's unreasonable to feel guilty about, it's just eating normal food and having the occasional food that is higher in sugar or whatever, then that's when you might need to start looking into whether are you being loving to yourself by making yourself feel guilty and anxious about eating that type of food. It all comes down to your relationship with yourself. Do you care about yourself? Do you love yourself? And are you trying to punish yourself when you don't need to? Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah, definitely. Now this goes on from what we were just saying, but how can you be disciplined when it comes to food and reduce the need for that quick dopamine hit from that little treat? Like, yes, having treats or whatever, as we said, it shouldn't be a treat. It should be, if you want to eat it, just as long as it's in your calories and plan it in. If you want something that's sweeter or whatever it might be. But how do you deal with the mindset when it comes to impulse with food?
I think definitely as you get into the habit of cleaning up your diet, you're going to crave those kind of foods a lot less anyway. But if you are sat there and you're really craving something sweet or you're craving something that's high in carbs, then think, what is it that my body needs right now? And do I need loads of sweets, or do I just need some fruit? Or do I need like a pizza, or do I need like some complex carbs, like some sweet potato or something? Like, try and listen, like, what is it that my body actually needs right now? And can I fulfill that craving with something a bit more nutritious and a bit more wholesome? than just giving into impulse and just eating shit that is then addictive and going to make you crave that even more.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah. On a Friday, right? That pint or that glass of wine sounds and will feel amazing, right? If you drank water beforehand, you wouldn't crave it as much because you probably haven't drunk anything. You're dehydrated. You're like, oh, and the first thing you think of is a glass of Echo Falls or a pint or whatever. And you're like, oh, that's going to be amazing. But if you just been hydrated throughout the day, you wouldn't be having that, oh, I need a drink now. And then suddenly it's Friday and you're like, oh, I need a drink.
So it's just about making sure you've already fulfilled yourself with everything that you need. And then if you are having a craving, it might be genuine. It might be because you genuinely need something.
Exactly. You might need some olives, a bit of salt, something like that. Nice work. Right. So I know that you're a massive advocate for fueling the body, like we've gone through already, and making sure that you eat lots of food. Like I've seen that you put on your stories about how that like you're eating 2,000 plus calories a day, and you're obviously lean and in good shape. And that's what obviously people want. So can you explain how food isn't actually trying to fight you and that it's fueling you and that you're able to still make progress and become more by eating more?
Yeah, of course. It's sad really because like, especially as females, like from being a child, you're brainwashed into thinking that food is bad and you have to watch what you eat and food is going to make you fat, like just in general. And it's just, you have to take that away and just break it down into the science of literally seeing food as a non-emotional thing, like seeing it as you would see putting petrol in a car. Like you're not going to put diesel in a petrol car. You want to give yourself the fuel that it's going to be right for you and the right amount. And I just really try to kind of train my clients to not see it in an emotional way and to see it more in a strategic way. This food is going to fuel this session. It's going to fuel my day. I'm going to be full until this time when I can eat again then. And just thinking in a more strategic way than thinking it's this big emotional thing that's got all this power over you. Like food is just not a big deal. That's what I try and teach everyone. Yeah,
and planning ahead is crucial. Like you were just saying, like you eat at a certain time and then you're going to be hungry roughly. Obviously you can't exactly predict it, but you know, you're like you or me, I know my body better than anyone. So being able to, and planning ahead and saying, right, breaking down, I've got this many calories. I'm going to eat this amount here, this amount here, this amount here. And this is why planning ahead and almost putting your calories into MyFitnessPal the day before. So that you're like, right, I'm going to eat this now and then I'm going to get to this point and I'm going to be hungry, so I'm going to eat then. Makes it so much easier. And instead of being like, oh, I'm a little bit hungry, what can I eat? And then suddenly you're scrambling for something. And that's where the difference between being on a, not rigid, but having a plan in place that you know you can follow easily, that's going to make your mindset at ease way more than if you're scrambling and then suddenly you don't hit protein, you don't hit your calorie, whatever it might be, and then your mindset drops because you think it's the nutrition, but really it's just you haven't planned ahead and you haven't put everything in place that you need to progress. Nice work, Quinn. Right, so food to give you a psychological advantage for sport or just focus in general?
Just in like a psychological sense, if you're thinking about your mind, you also need to think about your gut because your gut and your brain are interconnected. So your gut is responsible for the neurochemicals in your brain. That is basically the messengers in your brain that are going to affect your mood. So if you take care of your gut, you're going to, as a byproduct, be taking care of your mind, which literally is as literal as anxiety, depression, and mood. So it's hard nowadays to get everything that you need. I take a supplement called AG1, Athletic Greens, and that covers everything that you need. But if not, just in general, whole foods like leafy green vegetables and just unprocessed foods are going to be good for your gut, and just avoiding refined, sugary, high-fat foods that are just going to inflame your gut and negatively impact those kind of chemical messages in your brain.
Good stuff. Very informative. I did not know that myself. So there you go, you learned something. Okay, now we're going to move on to female hormones, and I've labelled it myself, lady things.
Lady things.
So basically, and obviously I don't have direct experience with this, okay? As you can hopefully tell, I'm not a female, but I have lived with females my whole life. I've had a sister who is 18 months younger. So I've gone through the whole teenage years and I have experience in it, but I don't experience it myself. So I'm not going to interject that much here. I'm just going to let you talk. But if there's anything from experience from family, whatever, then I'll maybe say something. All right. So what, in your experience, has been the issues with dieting and managing your hormones? So is there anything like where you've extremely dieted and you've had issues with cycle or feeling like, obviously when you're hungry, you get moody anyway, like anyone does. But have you ever sort of really reflected and thought, right, dieting has caused this problem?
For sure. I have accidentally stopped my periods for 4 to 6 months at a time. In lockdown, I was training so hard, and even though I was eating enough, I couldn't possibly eat enough to fuel the training that I was doing. So I was in a deficit for a long period of time, which just made my periods stop, which is a bad sign. Like, it's a sign of bad health. Your body's saying, we are not okay right now. That can easily happen if your fats are too low, or if you're in a deficit for too harsh of a deficit for too long of a time. This is also going to affect your skin, your nails, your mood, everything, irritability. You can flip that on its head. If you are dieting, it's going to be a lot harder at certain points of the month. One, because you are genuinely hungrier, and two, because it's affecting your mood and your feelings around yourself and around food, and you're going to feel a hell of a lot worse when you do give in to cravings and you do binge, because you are genuinely hungrier, but then you also feel low, so then you feel even worse. And you really have to be aware of this cycle, and I recommend tracking the cycle so you can pinpoint it and think, it makes sense. This is why I'm extra hungry today, and that's okay. I can afford an extra 500 calories today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that sounds like a very, very volatile, scary person that you just described there. Don't want to be dealing with that. So coming on to that, how do you, or how have you dealt with clients controlling emotions when you are on your period and you're feeling low, or you're just feeling like just very drained, and you're like, what is going on? And then you realize that you're about to come on or something. How do you deal with that yourself, and how have you dealt with that with clients?
I think the emotions and the mood, I struggle with this in the most top 1%. And the hardest thing about this is that not every female feels the same. Some females, they don't know they're going to come on until they wake up that day and they're on. Whereas I know 2 weeks before when my mood dips, confidence dips, I don't want to see anyone, I don't want anyone to see me, irritability, anger, everything. It's a real struggle. Like, there's actually something called PMDD, which I was convinced that I had at one point. And that is, it's like PMS, but it's like an extreme version. So instead of just premenstrual stress, it's premenstrual dysmorphic disorder, because I was going from one end of the spectrum of being happy to zero on a 2-week wave like this. And I could track it with my weight going like this and my cycle. And I don't know really where I'm going with this, other than the fact to say that it is, if you're struggling with this, it is hard, and not everyone can relate to you. And even some other females will be like, really? Like, come on, like, I don't, like, not every female, some females get a lot of pain, bad skin. For me, it's the mood thing. And the things that have helped, the only things that have helped really is just to track the cycle so that you can look at it and think, I'm not going crazy, I'm due on. And it does kind of take the power out of it, and you can kind of just think, okay, I can just ride this out, and I'm going to feel better next week.
Got you. So when it comes to, like, obviously you're on a program, or sort of in a state of dieting quite a lot at the moment, because obviously you want to be in good shape. How do you then, when you are feeling low, how do you try, and maybe fail sometimes, but how do you try and tackle just wanting to eat everything and anything that you want to? How do you stop yourself from, instead of limiting your progress that day and maybe going over your calories or whatever it is, how do you stop yourself from blowing the whole week up and thinking, screw it, I'm just going to absolutely go for it?
Again, it comes down to awareness. It comes down to tracking. So you can kind of know when to expect that you're going to feel ravenously hungry. And at the same time, you don't want to track and think, oh, today's the day I get to eat whatever I want because I'm doing my period. But it can help you to think, maybe I can expect to feel hungry around this time and I can prepare for that. And I can have more healthy food to kind of offset that hunger. But within the same breath, if you do give in, you do need to be a bit more gentle on yourself in this time because it's so much harder than people make out. You are genuinely hungry. Your body is burning 300 to 500 more calories in that time to do whatever it's doing to process that entire thing. So just be gentle on yourself. Like, you're not a monster. You're not a failure. Like, this is it's a real, you genuinely are hungrier. So forgive yourself. And this happens to me every month. I have a day where I feel like a monster and I just eat out of control and I think, that was the day.
Just one day, just done.
That was the day. And I know why it was, and it's done now. I'm not going to hold it against myself. If it's just happening once or twice a month, around the same time, I just let myself off.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's something that I definitely need to start taking into account. And obviously with my clients, they will tell me if they've got struggles and if they're like, my weight's gone up and I think it's to do with this, then I'll say, yeah, it's probably to do with that. But I don't actually take into account that while women are on, they may need to have more calories. That's something that maybe I need to.
Yeah, especially from carbs. In terms of weigh-ins, this is really important. And this is something that I stress every single week to my clients. I have weighed myself probably 3 to 4 times a week for years. Okay, so I am completely okay with seeing fluctuations. If you're not, and you've been doing everything right, and you weigh yourself and you're 2 kilograms up, because I personally will go up by 2 kilograms, which is nearly 5 pounds, and you're gonna think, oh my God, I've failed, I've gained weight, it's not working. That's why you need to be really careful and weigh yourself a lot more frequently to get used to seeing the fluctuations and to see the point on the calendar where it does go up, so that you know that you've not genuinely gained weight. It is a fluctuation. And I think some of my clients still don't believe me when I tell them, like, no, like, I'm 2 kilograms heavier today than I was 2 days ago. I've not done anything differently.
It is a struggle, and I've had it a lot. And this is the struggle that I've, as a coach, find when someone says, I don't want to weigh myself every day. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then, even like more than once a week. And then when they do weigh, it's on a day that they've even drunk more water. You know, like, I say this all the time. If you were to step on the scales and obviously whatever the reading is, get off, drink 2 liters of water, get back on, you'll weigh 2 kgs heavier. A litre weighs a kilogram in terms of water weight. So that's why I say, before you weigh yourself, don't eat or drink, don't do any of that, because you want to make sure it's as standardized as possible. But just remember, if you are on your period and your body is holding more water or what, like, I don't want to say anything that's wrong, because otherwise, but at the same time, if you're saying you're 2 kilograms heavier and you suddenly step on the scales after week 3 and you've been smashing it and you've been drop, and then you're back to square one, if you don't regulate that and if you don't track it and if you don't bring that into consideration, that can really knock your confidence and be the reason why you're like, screw it, I'm just going to give up.
And track it, because it can even be 2 weeks before that my weight goes up. But I can see the patterns now because I've got used to seeing my own patterns of how my own weight will fluctuate in sync with my cycle. And it's only from tracking that for a long time that I can now be okay with it, because I know that it isn't genuine weight gain and it's going to drop back down. But everyone's individual. Some people might go up just before, some people might go up a week before or a week after. I just think weighing yourself more often, it just neutralizes the scales being such a big daunting thing. Because I within the week, I will see mine go up or down by a kilo, and it's not genuine. It's just fluctuations. And I think a female body fluctuates a lot more than a male's body. And it's probably important for you as a coach to recognize, maybe they are being truthful, like it is just a genuine fluctuation.
Yeah, I never belittle someone for obviously putting weight on. I understand, and more than most coaches, I think I'm lenient when it comes to that. And I sit down and I'll explain to them, look, weight fluctuates, dependent. And I have said in the past, and this is without real in-depth knowledge, I've said, look, cycles do cause fluctuations. The amount of water you drunk makes difference. There's so many different things that come into it. And I say to people, and this is one that I've seen a lot, is if someone has a high carb day, right? To absorb water, your body needs to have carbohydrates. Okay. They've had a high carb day the day before and they ate loads of carbs in the evening. Okay. When they wake up in the morning, they're still going to be holding the water that they've drunk. So you might be holding an extra liter of water because you've eaten more carbs. And that is always a trend. And this is why you need to track your macros if you really want to get into it. Because if you can see, I've had more carbs that evening and I still drank a good amount of water. So the next day, you're going to weigh more because your body is absorbing it into the carbs. So you're going to weigh more. And then that increase, you're like, it's just down to that because I had more carbs. Obviously, it's not solely down to that, but the amount of times I have gone, a client said, I've gone up in weight. What's going on from yesterday? I'm like, okay, let's have a look. Look at it. They've had more carbs. They drunk a good amount of water. And then they've gone up in weight. And then I say, okay, cool. Let's just drop back to the normal amount of carbs that we've been doing and see what happens over 3 days. And then suddenly after like 2-3 days, it goes boom, back down to below what they were the day before. So and this is where consistency comes in, and you've got to make sure that you are being consistent over a long period of time. Perfect. Well, that concludes all the questions. Yep.
I thought there were more than that.
Well, I was even asking some extras. So we're going to keep it short because the last one was exceptionally long. But that was, I had a title that I read out a little bit.
Episode 2 of...
That was episode 2 of whatever we call this. But this was relationships between body, mind, food, exercise, and yourself. Mm-hmm. There you go. Well done. Oh, smashing the mics like that. Cool. Good work.